We're continuing our series of broadcasts from Santa Fe, New Mexico, that admirable state next to my home state of Arizona, which also is admirable. But Jessie and I, my wife, who's also an artist, we've been enjoying our stay here very much. And one of the reasons for that is an artist friend whom we're going to be talking with tonight by the name of Inger Jirby, Jirby. Inger's of Swedish descent, and we'll be talking about how does a Swedish lady eventually arrive in Santa Fe through New York. Inger has recently had a show, a quite successful one, I might add, at the Sena East Galleries here in Santa Fe. That is her gallery, her representation here in the city, and Inger is quite well known in Santa Fe and well known in New York, where she stems from. Inger, it's nice to have you on the program. Thanks for coming. We have a couple of her beautiful pictures behind us, and we'll be looking at them and talking about them in just a moment. Inger, how did you get from Sweden to New York? I mean, what brought you there? How did you cross the continents to the ocean?
Came actually from Sweden via Europe. I led a gypsy life, living in Greece, Mykonos, Venice, Italy, Paris, France. I met my ex-husband in Greece, and from there moved to Jamaica, the West Indies, and afterwards to New York City.
Oh, so there were some stops in between New York and Sweden.
Yes, many.
So, Inger, let's start to look at some of your pictures. To give people a chance, first of all, we're going to look at a couple of New Mexico landscapes, and then we'll look at some you did in New York and Greece, and then bring you back to New Mexico. Can you tell us where you painted this picture and what you were trying to express in it, or what aspects of landscape you were trying to capture?
This summer I worked in the Rio Grande Gorge canyon a lot, and I did this painting on the spot. I love to work outdoors. The studio or outdoors is my studio. Here I played quite a bit with color and did this straight on the spot. I get very inspired by the textures, the colors I do intensify, but also I invent. I can go with some local color, but then I will orchestrate a color scheme in my mind that will take over certain color ideas also when I work there. In this particular painting, what I did different from other paintings is that I imitated the starkness of the sky by putting on pure white with palette knife that gave it a very shiny and stark, luminous look that I felt is very typical of the skies here in New Mexico.
In New Mexico. Everybody talks about the light in New Mexico, so all the artists seem to be very conscious of it. So we start out with the New Mexico landscape, and let's look at next at Inger's painting of the mountain New Mexican town of Truchas. Is that what this is? Tell me something. Was this painted on the spot? And I'll tell you that one of the reasons I ask it is that as a newcomer to New Mexico, some people say that because the people are they maybe stick to each other, or they're somewhat clannish up in the mountains, and they're might be kind of hard on outsiders. Is that true, or is that just a rumor? I mean, did you have any problems painting this out there? Or?
I have never had problems up in Truchas. However, I have been warned that it is quite a dangerous and quite violent town to be in, but I never go off
the highway?
the main track. That is not to be recommended.
Okay. Can you tell us something about what part of town this is, or what you were doing in this?
This is the main street that goes through Truchas, and I had a lot of problems with this painting. I started off on the spot with a quite a naturalistic scene and a naturalistic composition, and I couldn't get a good composition up, so I started to play with the different elements that I saw around myself. And I have painted quite a bit up there, so I know the forms. Mm-hmm. And I finally got up a composition that pleased me, and I had an townscape in tertiary colors first, with a quite dark mood. And it took me, there were two conflicting moods in the painting, and it took me a full year until I finished it at home in the studio, where I finally went with the red mesa, as you see in the back there on the left-hand side, right. The yellow in the sky. I painted in a yellow road, and I called it Yellow Truchas. I wanted to paint this picture with a certain color climate and using color space in the painting. So it got quite abstracted from what was there on the scene.
Right. Well, I think everybody who sees your paintings, and you can see the one behind us now, is aware of your ability to use color and the beautiful richness and brightness of it. And I think there's also a beautiful emotional quality in these pieces as well. The way you had the church in the background and that taller building on the right, and just all the overlapping, interacting, angular structures. I think it was very well put together. Now, let's take a look at this piece in New York. You left New York when? What year are we talking about? How many years ago?
I left New York City in 1982.
Okay, so you've been here 5 years?
Yeah.
Tell us about this picture, where it is, and this looks like New York to me, certainly seen through your special vision, but to tell us where this is and what you were doing here.
This is exit of the Holland Tunnel, and I did quite a few urbanscapes during that time, after a visit to Las Vegas, where in Nevada, and I saw that finally that these enormous signs were very interesting pieces architecturally, and I saw that those will be icons of our time. So I started to see that these enormous signs were very interesting parts of the urbanscape, and I did a whole series of urbanscapes where those enormous beautiful signs were a very important part of the painting.
I think that's a very nice way to put it, urban icons. I think that's exactly what they are. They're wonderful symbols, and visually they're fantastically beautiful and interesting to look at, even though they may be advertising junk. You know, I mean, they're still beautiful signs. But you and I and Jessie, my wife, the painter Jessie Benton Evans Gray, we were members of a group called the Street Painters back there, which is still alive and well, and Jessie and I are still members of it, though we've been in New Mexico here visiting. Were you out painting with the street painters when you were doing this, or with any individual artists, or were you out on your own painting it, or did you sketch in the street and then go back in the studio and finish the picture? When you were painting that picture, was there another street painter with you painting it, or?
I was alone when I did that particular painting, but otherwise I was out with the street painters quite a few times, painting and sketching, and I've always painted outdoors because I find that if I get too far away from reality, then things can turn pretty false, and I cannot draw out of my own mind forever. I need the feedback from the outdoors is very important to me.
I think that was the basic premise of the street painters. I think we all felt that way. Let's take a look at the next city. Oh, okay, we missed the cityscape. We're in Greece at this point. Tell me what you loved Greece, I think, didn't you? I mean,
Yeah.
Mykonos. Can you tell me about your experiences there and what you liked about it? And it looks like it was a tremendously paintable place, a great place to paint. Can you tell me about this picture and your feeling for Greece?
I moved to Greece. I'm from Lapland, above the Arctic Circle, tundra and very sparse vegetation. I have always been drawn to places mountainous places with very arid vegetation. So that's what appealed so much to me in the first place. Here, Greece had mountains, an arid landscape, but the sea on top of everything.
And it wasn't so cold, right?
And it was wonderful, lots of light, and a very beautiful place. So I was very intrigued by Greece, and especially a few places like Mykonos and Santorini. It was the light, the architecture, the setting that appealed so incredibly much to me.
Yeah, well, I think you painted beautifully. As we look at these pieces, and here's another view, I guess, of Mykonos. So what was there, a bay or an inlet around the village?
This is called actually Little Venice in Mykonos. And it's said that the Venetians built it when Venice occupied Greece, or Greece was... I'm losing it.
Yeah,
well, so and it's an incredibly beautiful scene, Mykonos, very painterly with all the inlets and the mountains.
And the buildings, they strangely, they remind me very much of Santa Fe adobe buildings too, don't they? I don't know what the reality is there, but the way you painted them, they've got sort of curving outlines and forms that kind of grow out of the land rather than being implanted on them, you know, the way so many...
The Cycladic architecture is very similar to the Pueblo architecture in New Mexico. It's the rounded corners, the organic quality. So actually, even the interiors with the vigas here and the beams in Greece, it's extremely similar, though the building materials were different. Stone in Greece and adobe in New Mexico, but very similar architecture.
Inger, I have to ask you a question that I was going to ask at any point during the show. We've seen some of your pictures, and I'm wondering what influence on you your Swedish background has had. And you have a penchant for color in your paintings that's quite beautiful. Your clothes are fantastically beautiful in color. I think of you, I think of your house, which is very beautifully furnished with kind of red rugs, and there's some Swedish dolls and things in yellows and reds. You have one red car, you have a yellow car, and it seems to me that it all ties together to create this fantastic totality of a person who is completely reflecting themselves and maybe their early environment or upbringing. Are the Swedish people in their crafts and their homes and their dress, I mean, are they richly colorful? Where does your color come from, in other words? Do you know? I mean, does it come from your Swedish heritage in a sense, do you think? Or?
I think sometimes jokingly I have mentioned that the falls in Lapland made me an artist.
The
falls.
Falls.
The fall, the colorful falls.
Oh, the falls when they...
right.
foliage changes and
the
turns
foliage, the trees would take on all the colors of the spectra.
So I'm getting notices here. What about your family background? I mean, was there anything in that would have an influence in your bright color? I mean, is there maybe they were artists or they were?
No, they were not artists. My mother, she was a very good hairdresser, and she taught me what she called good taste, but in fact she taught me design, which was very important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm very influenced by folk art. I love folk art, and I think the Swedish folk art has sunk very deep into my soul.
That's what I was wondering, because I remember seeing some like trays, and there are some simple dolls or something that are beautifully made and beautiful color and very fresh and original, and that's the way I think of your painting. Why don't we, speaking of your painting, let's carry on. Now here's an interior, I guess, of your New York City loft. We have about 5 minutes left, so we won't dwell too much on this. I want to get to your other Santa Fe pieces, but would you have a comment about this family scene here in your New York loft, or the design aspects or color?
This is a family scene with all the elements that I had in the loft. The focus in the painting is my then young son, who was about barely 2, a toddler with his toys. Most of the painting is actually treated as a pattern, though I think the scene goes beyond merely being a pattern.
I think it's really a very rich painting, and it talks about family relationships and psychological relationships, and it's a wonderful sense of space, and the color is just absolutely fantastic. I think we're going to have start some more Santa Fe pictures coming up here. You've done several of courtyards and looking through arches at courtyards, and maybe you can talk about what you're expressing in this picture, and the tremendous use of the border here, I think, is very effective and it's such a characteristic Santa Fe scene, isn't it, with the buildings and the flowers and a patio, perhaps?
This is the Scoberns garden out in Pewaukee, and I don't know really why I started to put that incredibly red border. It's just that it was an emotional state. I did that painting very, very fast, and there were many things that clicked. You know, it was one of those paintings that I got for free in a very short time, where there was not as much calculation, actually, as intuitive feeling and playing and having fun at doing a wonderful painting.
Oh, it is a wonderful painting. It's a wonderful relief to get something for free, as you say, without so much pain and agony. Let's go quickly to the next two, which are sort of portals, and is that just east of your gallery, or what? Is that on Palace Avenue there?
That's where the Shed, the restaurant, is. I don't know if you have had their cheesecake with raspberry sauce, but
Sounds
I highly recommend it.
Okay, we'll recommend to all our viewers too.
I worked very much with a grid I did a series of these with kind of framing the painting in different ways, either with a border or with architectural elements, and but basing it basically on the grid.
Yeah, they're very powerful. I think we have another one that we can look at, and then we'll get on to some of the landscapes. I don't want to overlook some of her paintings of Rio Grande Gorge, but here's another one with beautiful color and that wonderful sense of the archway with that beautiful red glowing beyond it. Let's go on to the next, because I do want to look at Rio Grande Gorge, and the picture behind us, actually, we can talk about in just a moment. I think it's in Silverton, is these beautiful red peaks behind us. Is that?
Yeah, that's
Is that in Colorado, or is
it's in the southwest of Colorado,
Southwest.
Silverton.
Yeah.
And it's a beautifully interesting mining town there.
Yeah, I think it's tremendous what you did with it in the valley, and these very, very forceful peaks rising up. As a matter of fact, here's Rio Grande Gorge appearing behind me, and I think that's a tremendous picture. Just what we haven't talked about so much is at all really is some of the symbolism in these pieces, but you know, just to see that tremendous chasm, and I mean, it talks about all kinds of things of, you know, almost the problems of the world or forces of nature or personal chasms, you know, which we all have, and you capture them so beautifully. Now, just to contrast with it, this picture seems so kind of so pastoral and peaceful and beautiful and warm and friendly and untroubled. Where did you paint this, and what's your comment about this?
I painted that up on Old Taos Highway. It's it's a large canvas, and I started it outdoors. And the title of this painting is Gateway of Santa Fe, and I had in mind that I should do it with a very, very big rainbow, and I had that in there for a starter. But then I took the painting inside, discovered that it didn't work out, went back to the spot, and the last element to go was that big rainbow that started off the painting in the first place. But I have found out that usually the element that I'm the most attached to in a painting is what has to go finally to bring the painting out.
You have to fight it off and abandon it and let go this thing that you really prize, and then the painting comes. Well, maybe that's there's a deep philosophical thing in it. Sometimes we have to let go our personal desires and leave it to a higher power, I think, to accomplish the things that we're not able to do. Do you feel? Oh, here. Okay. This is a clearer view of the Rio Grande Gorge. What I sort of gave my feeling about it. What were you trying to express here, or what attracted you to paint it in the first place?
I have always loved driving up to Taos, and when you have passed through the windy roads of the different mountain passes, and you come up over the hill, and this incredible plateau opens up, and you get almost to a state of shock seeing the plateau opening up, and then the gorge in the middle of this incredible plain. And I always wanted to do a painting of the Rio Grande Gorge, and this was first I painted one big painting that was a total failure, but the second attempt then I had already seen the sunset, and people came by, and I painted during the day and said, but the sun ain't there.
Yeah,
so
they're very practical, aren't they, when they come by and comment?
Yeah, and the second attempt led to a good painting, because then I had already had the experience the day before of the sunset. It was not a pure invention anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tremendous vision. It's almost like a wound in the earth in a sense, and it's not. I can see why you might have trouble the first time around with it, because that would not be an easy structure, I guess you can call it, to paint. Well, what's kind of interesting about the gorge too is that I haven't been in it up high, but they say it's very rugged and the river is very forceful with a lot of rapids, and then you compare it to the Rio Grande where it divides America and Mexico, and I guess it becomes very placid down there. And there's a lot of people don't realize what really kind of a forceful river it is. Inger, as we move toward the end of the program, I want to ask you I've been asking the New Mexico artists, do you feel a kinship with the earlier artists of New Mexico who perhaps came from the East? I mean, I know that you don't consider yourself a New Mexico artist any more than Paul Shapiro or anyone else does, any more than I would consider myself an Arizona artist. I mean, we think of ourselves more on a national or international scope, but in terms of, since you are in New Mexico at the moment, do you feel any kinship, or do you think of the past artists who came to New Mexico for various reasons, and you came for your various reasons, and do you think of any relationship between you, or are you just kind of...
I feel that, for example, I like the work very much of John Marin, Marsden Hartley, Stuart Davis, and I feel there is a certain relationship to my work and with theirs, and I feel also that their work to me is very strongly related to the French school. Mm-hmm. And I feel that I have a kinship to the French school also, and right. I feel they are in their turn related to the French school also.
You're thinking, say, Van Gogh and Cézanne, or
Van Gogh, Cézanne, the Fauves, the Expressionists and the Post-Expressionists.
Yeah, great. Okay, Inger, it's been so good having you with me on the program. I really appreciate it. I respect your art highly and respect you as an individual. And it's been wonderful to have Inger Jirby, the Santa Fe, now that located in Santa Fe, an artist of wonderful color and stature who shows at the Sena East Galleries here in Santa Fe. She's been my guest this day on Artist and Critic in New Mexico. My name's Don Gray. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.